Well, hey guys, what is going on? In this video, I want to show you how you can make $1,000 in just a few days if you had a gun to your head. Now, this is based on me taking over probably 2,000, 3,000 sales calls in the high ticket space over the past 5 to 7 years, whether it's agency, info, high ticket, coaching, whatever the case may be, this will be applicable to those industries. Now, you also may be on this channel because you're looking to try and figure out different ways to implement AI to create an extra income, or maybe you're from the agency market and you're looking to try and implement new strategies into your agency. This will help as well. Now, I want to preface this by saying this will be a little bit of a nerdy video, and that's because I really dig into the numbers of what's realistic when you're trying to acquire a client using paid ads. Now, everyone talks about leverage. Leverage is where you're able to create more results and output with less time because you have higher leverage inputs. So a good example of leverage is instead of digging a hole with a spoon, you can dig a hole with an excavator. You'll be able to dig a hole probably 1,000 times faster with an excavator versus a spoon. Or if you want to travel, it's much higher leverage to travel with a plane via a plane as opposed to a car. That is leverage. Now, one of the biggest leverage factors that you can have if you run a high ticket business is paid ads. Now, specifically with paid ads, there are numbers that you need to look at. Now, these numbers will dictate how quickly you can get a client, what average spend you need to be spending to make like that $1,000 in return, and what some realistic numbers are. So the first factor that I always look at is the audience or the market that you're trying to target, whether it's male, female, whether it's in health, wealth, or relationships, or whatever kind of industry that you're working in, whether it's a health dominated industry, it's a finance dominated industry, it's a trade or property services dominated industry. All of those factors will change what kind of numbers you can expect. So if you're in a really, really good market where there's a lot of demand, there's not much competition, you're going to get much better numbers. And that's why, in general, when I talk about these things, the most important thing that you can do is find a really good market. Now, the second thing is have a really good offer. Now, the offer is essentially your product and the way that you deliver it. So it could be you do websites, but you deliver it using AI agents, or it could be we do marketing using Facebook ads with a guarantee. So the product is the offer, or the offer is the product, and the way you deliver it, also the way you communicate it as well. So you might actually work with lots of different industries, but you might have a breakthrough product like an iPhone that is just so good in terms of what it is and what it does that it does the selling itself. So if you have a really good product, this will influence all of these numbers. Now, the last thing is really the sales and marketing message behind the product and the offer and the audience that you're trying to target. Now, specifically, these are the numbers you want to look at if you need to make $1,000 in the next 3 or 4 days. The first thing to mention is sales cycle. Now, what you've got to understand is that for most people, if they've never seen you before, they're going to do research and they're not going to buy straight away unless you have a really compelling offer and marketing message. And so what you've got to factor in when you're trying to get that $1,000 is that if you're going to cold traffic, you need to give yourself about 3 to 4 days of sales cycle time to get one person paying you and getting cash through the door. If you try and do it in 24 hours, it's going to be too hard with cold traffic. If you need to get cash coming in the door within 24 hours, it's much better to go to warm traffic with a really, really strong offer. Now, we're doing 3 to 4 days on cold traffic. You can do this on cold traffic in 3 to 4 days' time, which factors in for a typical sales cycle. Now, the numbers that you want to look at are as follows. You want to figure out what your cost per lead is on a direct offer ad. Now, I want to talk about the difference between a direct offer ad versus an indirect offer ad. A direct offer ad is where you say, hey, if you're this and you have this problem, we can help you solve it using this service or product. So it could be, hey, if you're a tradie and you're missing lots of calls, we can help you solve that with a callback agent, and we'll give you a 7-day free trial to test it out. And here's how it works, right? So that is a direct offer. Now, an indirect offer or ad is where you say, learn about AI and how to implement it into your business, free downloadable report. So with the indirect offer, you're selling information typically, and with the direct offer, you're directly offering them a service. And so typically what you'll find is that you get a cheaper lead if you do a lead magnet, which is an indirect offer. You get a more expensive lead when you do a direct offer, but they're going to be closer to actually buying your service and product than someone who's still gathering information. And so what you want to do is run a direct offer ad and then determine what your cost per lead is. Now, if your cost per lead is $20, then it's very likely that your cost to actually get that client is going to be $200 to $400. Now, how do I figure that out? What we found is that across the board, if you run a direct offer to pretty well most markets, unless you're in a really hot market, you're going to close around 5 to 10% of all leads that come through. 10% is really strong. 5% is really good. 3% is kind of the bare minimum. So if you're generating 20 leads, you typically close 1. Now, if your product is $3,000 and you need to generate $1,000, then all you need to do is literally spend your cost per lead times 20 and close 1 out of 20. If you can close 2 out of 20, that's really good. If you can close 4 out of 20, that's incredible. But 2 out of 20 is pretty solid. 2 out of 20 is pretty solid. 1 out of 20 is pretty normal too. And so that is actually the secret ratio. What you've got to do is figure out your cost per lead with a direct offer ad, and then have a high enough price point so that you can get a return on your ad spend. So if we do the math, and let's say you sell a $3,000 product, you close 1 in 20 leads, it costs you $20 per lead. That means it costs you $400 to make $3,000 back. And so if you do the numbers, that's like not a 10x, but pretty close to a 10x return. Now, if you spend $1 to make $10 back with any investment, you would do it over and over and over again. Like everyone would, because that's a 1,000% return on investment, right? And so if you figure out those numbers, if you have all those things together, that will give you the ability to generate $1,000 out of thin air within 3 to 4 days if you had a gun to your head. That's how I would do it. Again, I've laid out all the different, factors that you need to understand and take into consideration when you're doing that. But if you can figure out your cost per lead, multiply it by 20, or if you're really feeling confident, multiply it by 10. That's how much it will cost you to get that client. Now, if you guys want more information, I'm going to do another video on how to make sure that your sales is so good that you can actually make sure that when you do spend that money, you will close 1 out of 20 to 2 out of 20. Now, if you want a copy of that training or get notified when I drop it, comment sales in the comment section below, and I'll speak to you guys soon. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you got value out of the training, and I'll speak to you soon. Cheers.